Welcome back to Upside Down Data. Let's talk about Solana. So Solana obviously is one of the big winners so far in this seemingly early bull market. A lot of people left it for dead after the FTX collapse, but Solana has been just truly phenomenal from the absolute bottom to where we are right now, up over 1,000%. That is very nice, especially for an asset that's as large of a market cap as Solana is. But that's the past. In some ways, who cares about that? What we care about is the future. Where is Solana going next? What might be a reasonable outlook? So what I want to talk about is some of what our models think about where Solana could be going. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first model I want to talk about is our short-term upside downside potential indicator. So this is one of our risk models. Cares about moves that play out over days to weeks, so more short-term in its focus. So higher levels mean higher risk, lower levels mean lower risk. And so what we can see is that more recently, the short-term UDPI had gotten pretty elevated through this run. We had this big push up to this local top here. Then we kind of cooled off to around zero. Another big push up into this local top. Now we're cooling off again. Now we have bounced and we have started to move it back up a bit. And so what this means is that there is still plausible upside potential in the short term for Solana right now. Now, it's not as lopsided as it was back here, for example, back in September before this massive run, or even back here in June of 23, kind of the local bottom here before we went on this big run here. Not that low yet, but certainly nice. A lot better than, for example, being up here or over here. So what that's telling me is that if the market wants to allow it, if things will remain bullish and we'll see broader rallying across the crypto space, some other alts have already started to put in new year-to-date highs like Chainlink, for example. If that becomes a broader trend, would not be surprising to see Solana be able to realize some of this short-term upside potential. But nothing is, of course, guaranteed. And one of the things that we can also look at is what is the longer-term outlook from the UDPI's perspective. So this is the long-term UDPI I'm showing you now, which cares about moves that play out over months to multiple months, much longer in its time horizon. Well, you'll notice that it's cooled off, but it hasn't cooled off as much as the short-term UDPI, which got all the way down to around -2. This has not even gotten down below zero. And so what I would be personally looking for is, before I think it's especially likely to see some massive rally like we saw coming out of September, for example, I might like to see the long-term UDPI cool off more, maybe below zero, maybe down into the negatives to really catalyze that move. We saw, for example, in the move in September, we were all the way down at -3.88, significantly lower levels before that run. Now, it doesn't mean we have to reset all the way down there before we can think of upside. I mean, look what happened back here. We got down to about -1 or so, cooling off from here. Then we put in the run that ultimately put in the new all-time high up over here. So certainly we could rally from higher, but I still would think that getting below zero would be the first level I'd personally be watching. We see this with a lot of assets that, generally speaking, especially at this point in the market cycle, relatively early on, usually you'll see risk cool off further before that next leg up. It's usually only in full-on euphoric bull markets that you could see long-term risk getting really high, only reset a little bit, and then keep moving up from there. So nothing's guaranteed, of course, not financial advice, obviously, also. But personally, I'm going to be looking for this to reset a little bit more before I get super optimistic for sustainable upside. Could happen, but personally, I think it's probably more likely we need to reset a little bit more first. But that said, we do still, again, have plausible short-term upside potential. So I'm not saying we can't have some kind of a rally. I just think it'd be more likely to be a massive rally coming from lower long-term UDPI levels. That's my main thought there. Okay, so let's take another zoom out and think about the longer term outlook for Solana. So there are a couple of models I want to talk about. The first one is the momentum bias indicator, or MBI. So this quantifies the amount of momentum that's in the asset. And then positive values mean positive momentum bias. That means positive momentum is predominating and driving the market. Negative values mean negative momentum bias, when negative momentum is dominating the market. And what you'll see with this indicator is distinct patterns of behavior. In bull markets, you spend much more time in the green than in the red. In bull markets, the exact opposite. The red little blips into the green and down, down, down. But what you're seeing right now is telltale behavior of a transition out of a bear market into a bull market. And I was talking about this at the time. We went all the way down here to the FTX collapse. We rallied up nicely out of it. But then through this whole time, we're doing this oscillation around zero. Why is that bullish? Why is that a good thing? Well, the MBI is a z-score in its output. So zero is actually the average amount of momentum in the market. And with Solana, that's obviously positive given how much it has moved up over its lifetime. So that means that if you're generally hanging out around zero, That means you're generally kind of hanging out to a place where positive momentum might be showing some strength and might be giving signs of being starting to win out. And then that often leads into the big expansion phase. You'll see this oscillation where price either kind of grinds sideways or grinds up slowly. And then that builds into this kind of action here, where now we've seen what seems to be that early phase of a bull market, that first expansion, maybe something like we've seen back here, for example. And now price is starting to consolidate. We're coming back down here a little bit on the MBI, but we're starting to get more to that position. So it wouldn't surprise me if we kind of go back to oscillating down here, if we need to spend more time correcting, or we could just keep on spending more time in the green. That would signify continuation of a stronger part of the bull market. Now, I think it might be good for Solana to spend more time consolidating. Oftentimes, you'll notice that the longer we do this kind of a thing, the more explosive that expansion can be. And so in some ways, it might be nice for Solana to actually consolidate a bit longer, shake out the weaker hands or get rid of the selling pressure, get longer term holders, the ones who buy in, so that they'll ride it for longer in that expansion phase whenever it comes. But this certainly looks like early bull market behavior. Regardless of any of those considerations, the fact remains this looks a lot more like early bull market than anything else, in my opinion. It's showing the telltale signs of that on the MBI. And the other thing we can look at that's also showing telltale signs of early bull market behavior is our forecast model. So this estimates the probability that Solana's price will be above where it is right now 6 months in the future. So it goes from 0 to 1, and those are just probabilities. So for example, down over here at 0.04, that'd be a 4% of upside. Back over here at 96, that'd be 96% chance of upside. So look at what happened more recently here. You saw the forecast model getting increasingly bullish through this whole point. And then notice right before this big expansion happened back here in September, it shot up to the upside, absolutely ripped up to the upside, up to about 89% chance of upside it was estimating at this point right here. And then all throughout here, it's just been generally staying quite bullish. And this is what you see in bull markets. Look back through here, for example. There was volatility that happened in the short term, but generally speaking, the model was very bullish through here. And indeed, price went up, 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 up. But then sure enough, as we rounded into the all-time high, it started getting more and more concerned in that longer-term outlook. And indeed, we had that mega nasty bear market that brought us so far down from the all-time high up over $250. So it seems like we're doing the same thing again. We're getting back up to those super high levels, and it very much looks like a bull market behavior. So again, this is looking 6 months out. A lot can happen in the short term, and we were just talking about that, looking at things like the short-term UPI, for example. But I think the broader point is the more important one. In some ways, the short term doesn't really matter here. Even the medium term only matters so much. What really matters is, are we in that bull market? Because if we are, then really the most important thing is just not to mess it up, to not just blow up your portfolio and be left on the sidelines when everything goes crazy. And so getting too cute with it right now can have its risks associated with it. And so the data very much seem in line with that story. This is an early bull market. And so for my opinion, then the short term doesn't matter so much. It's not really worth being all that worried about. So obviously not financial advice, but that's where I'm sitting. The data right now very much look that way. If they change, I'll change my outlook, but they haven't changed. So I'm not going to change my outlook. It looks like we're in an early bull market, not just for Solana, but frankly for the entire crypto market. And if that's the case, then we might be setting the stage for some nice price action in the future, some really exciting price action to finally get back into those times where instead of the oppressiveness of the bear market and the boringness of the transition into continued excitement. And the hype that we saw here could just be a small introduction to what we might see coming later. So not financial advice, of course. You make your own opinion of where you think things are going, but that's what I'm seeing with Solana. Seeing the short term, things could happen. It might need to cool off a bit more though before a sustained rally can happen in the medium term. But I do think long term, we are in that position. And so probably, in my opinion, we're at that don't mess it up phase in the market cycle. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates about our models and more over there. And go to our website, polaritydigital.io, see live data from our models and more.